Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and today I'm coming back to you guys with another Switch video. And this time, it's going to be from Unikeys. So we have to thank Unikeys, of course. You guys can save 7% if you use the code Mikey. Now, I'm going to be doing only 3 different keyboards, but come join the live stream on Fridays where you can come and ask me to test out a Switch on a board I have, and that way you can get some more sound tests that you are needing to know if this Switch is for you. But let's get into this right away and see what the Switch is like and hear it in the board. So let's go right into it, but please make sure to like and subscribe. So this is a very recent release from Keygeek, and with the nylon material, I'm expecting a pretty clacky sound profile. But of course, we're gonna have to really do a sound test to see what this is like. Now, the PA switches. What are my thoughts on it from just the sound test, right? Before we do a total take apart, my thoughts is the fact that these have a very interesting sound. The clackiness is not your usual Keygeek clacky. Now, why I say this is because Keygeek clacky switches I feel like happen very, very similar to each other, and I've been looking for something a little bit more new. The Keygeek PA definitely hits that spot because in different configurations, different layouts, different boards, this thing has a very different sound that really kind of emphasizes that clackiness as well as a little bit of resonation that I really am enjoying a lot, especially in like a PEI plate in a top mount keyboard like the Secret from Keybay, and even in the Neo 65 with a CF plate. It provides a very different sound, and the more interesting thing is that if you loop these switches, they also provide another uniqueness to it. So the stock switches have its own sound profile, and then the actual hand lubed version will then also have its own unique, and both of them are different. Now, not one is better than the other, but just unique, and some people are going to prefer the lubed versions, and some people are going to prefer the stock lubed version. So it's going to be very interesting to see, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments below. But of course, let's open this up, do a bunch of tests that we need to do, and see what the switch is all about. So let's get into that. Now, you could have really heard the clack even with the switch not being in the board itself, and I believe the PA really has that interesting clack to it. I really liked this type of sound. It was very, very unique to its own self and very different than regular Keygeek clack. Now, with the stem, my apologies that there's got dust in there while I was actually putting it down, but you can see that there's very, very minimum lube that was done on the stem itself. On the sides, it doesn't even look like Cryotox 205G0. I'm going to be honest with you, it almost seems like it's going to be 105 instead. It looks more like a grease than it does Cryotox. Very, very, very thin type of lubricant. And it's all around the sides as to the back and the front as well, all towards more like the edges of the stems instead of, say, more like where the rails would be in terms of where it hits the bottom housing. That I found quite interesting. Another thing that Keygeek does that I found very, very interesting, even though their switches are very, very smooth, is the fact that the pins are also slightly lubed. So there will be a little bit of lube on the leaves, and where the stem will actually hit the leaves will be a little bit of lube that's on there. And that one actually does look like Cryotox 205G0. That really does help with a lot of the smooth feeling of Keygeek switches and even HMX switches. They're the two brands that I noticed that does this the most. Now, in terms of the spring length, we're looking at a total of 21 millimeters spring length, and that was what they were measuring in terms of the actual specifications of the switch, and I was also measuring the exact same thing. So we're looking at 21 millimeters for the spring, a single stage, and it's supposed to be a Japanese spring, which is supposed to provide a little bit more of that smoothness in terms of that spring feel. Now, as you can see here when I'm looking at from the front side, the actual press feel of the switch itself is quite light. So the actuation point is very, very light, but you still have a little bit of that resistance when you're pressing down. It's an interesting feeling. It has a little bit of resistance, but it's still very, very light and total. And when you press all the way down, it's a very smooth press. Now the actual travel distance measurement. So I started off at 18.1 and went down to 14.5, and that would measure to 3.6 millimeters. So we're going to measure this again because they say it's supposed to be 3.4 millimeters of travel. So we're looking here at 18.1 or 18 actually to be more accurate, all the way down to 14.4, which again, that's 3.6 millimeters of travel. This means we're actually getting an extra 0.2 millimeters of travel, which actually does line up with the measurements because they say it's 3.4 millimeters plus or minus 0.2. So 3.6 millimeters is what I'm measuring. In terms of the decibel test, so here you can see how loud the switches are. And to be fair, these switches are definitely on the louder side. I would have said that these ones are measuring and averaging around the 66 decibel, which is going to be like an office towards normal conversation decibels. Now on the top end, you're getting very little movement, and then even when you press it all the way down, it's very little movement for the stem, which is quite impressive. So you're getting very little stem wobble with the switch, and even with the keycap, it doesn't move too much. You'll even see it here. Now towards the backlighting, the backlighting is actually quite accurate. You're not getting too much changes from the switch color itself, which makes sense. It is a grayer switch, and in general, it's quite bright. I was actually quite surprised with it because it doesn't have a light diffuser, and even comparing with the B-Suns that are around it, and you should be able to tell because there's a little bit of color difference between the B-Sun and the Keygeek, and it's actually quite impressive. Now it's time to check it in the actual spreadsheet, which by the way, if you guys want access to the spreadsheet, I am working on changing it to a Google Sheet, which if you join my Discord, you'll get access to it. And this is only going to be for those that are part of the Discord. So the Keygeek here measures around 326 hertz, which kind of makes sense. It does have a little bit of like a deeper mid-tone bottom out when you hit the bottom, but then it also has like a bright clack to it. So then it goes into like more of a clacky switch side, But if we measure with different switches out there, which we took a look at, like the Keygeek B1, which is 400 Hertz, that's like a bright poppy clack. And then we can go and look at, say, the HMX Coral, which is a little bit higher pitched. This one, I would put it more towards a mid bright clack. So originally I put light, but actually going and measuring and taking a look at it, this would be more towards a mid bright clacky, and hearing the switch again, you can hear a little bit of that deepness. I'll have the links in the description for you guys to go check out the Keygeek PA switches on Unikeys. You can check it out yourselves, see what you're getting, and of course save some money. They have a nice reward system as well, so if you make purchases over some time, you will stack enough points to get a nice discount, and you can even grab their keycap sets, which they have really nice key combo ones, which I also actually ordered more recently, the Dolch and the She, which is going to be interesting to see in boards that I get in the future. I think the Keygeek PA is quite interesting. I really enjoy them. So these are switches I personally have been enjoying a lot, and I'm going to keep enjoying for the next little while. I'll have to catch you guys next time, but please go check out the other videos I got.